Data is verified. The first step is the data is in the patient's chart. The doctor writes it into their chart. And then it has to go from the chart, and I'll talk about the old way, the paper way, actually. It goes from the chart onto a piece of paper. There's a form, a standardized form, so we collect only the information that we need. And then there's a person called clinical monitor who will come to the hospital, and they will make sure that what's in the patient's chart is the same as what's on the page that the doctor wrote everything on. So if all that matches up, then that piece of paper gets sent in to another group who then will data enter it into a database. So one person will go in and they'll type everything. And then a second person actually comes back in and they type exactly the same thing. And, there's always human error. And so sometimes there's errors that are detected, but they get corrected because the second person would have found the errors. So that's the next step. So then what my group does is we go in and we clean up the data. So we're constantly making changes to the database as well as we get the right information. So because somebody's in there sort of tinkering around with the database again, there could be human error. So at the end, once all of the data's in and everybody declares that the data is cleaned, there's a step where they compare what's in the database all the way back to that original page where the data got entered, and they might find some more discrepancies. And if they do find any errors, then they clean those up as well, and then the data gets shipped out for analysis. And right before that, they do something called a lock, and that means that nobody can touch or change the data at all. So you're basically confident that the data is the same as how it was in the patient's chart. When you're doing the analysis, you want to be able to be very confident whether the drug works or if it doesn't work. If a drug doesn't work, some people might be sad, but it's much better that you determine that it doesn't work before, people who are very sick are actually using it and we find out that it doesn't work for them. So it's very, very important to make sure that every step along the way that the data is exactly how it was when it had initially got collected. And there are lots of regulations and guidances that the FDA has available that every company must follow. And it's really for the protection of, the people within that country. And it's not just necessarily the FDA. The trials that I work on also become approved in other countries as well, in Europe or Australia or Japan, and they all have their own guidance. So even if you're just working on a trial that's happening in the United States, if the data is going to go someplace else for an approval, you have to abide by those rules as well.